Hey there, guys. This is Road Gang Radio, and you're rolling with Jimmy Mack, live from the Fastport Studios in New Orleans.
Canada calling to all the people of America. That, of course, means JP and JR on CC with OBAC. What am I talking about? Of course, Joanne Ritchie and Jim Park. Jim Park and Joanne Ritchie on Canada Calling here on RadioNemo.com. If you're listening on Odyssey, man, you got some audacity. Have you given your heart to the Eye of Heart? Well, we are thrilled to welcome you. Are you yakking it up on YouTube with all of our friends making comments over there? Guys, if you can't make the call in at 615-292-6366, don't forget that your questions will be asked if you actually type them in on the chat. Lots of great stuff coming your way. You can find us at 365 as well. That feed is at RadioNemo.com. Just push the button and jump on in if you're looking for alternative ways to listen while you're rolling. I understand that some of you can't listen in certain ways. There are all kinds of options. You can find them at RadioNemo.com. Welcome back to Joanne and Jim. It's good to have you both. Good morning, my friends.
Good morning,
good morning
to you.
Yeah, we're in good spirits over here. We're over at the Fastport Studios in one of the few cities left in America that actually speaks both languages that the people of Canada on many occasions speak, and we're thrilled to have you guys down here with us. Okay, Joanne, as we always do, let us just begin with a shout out and good feeling towards everybody.
Yeah, let's get off to a positive start. We've got a shout out to, we have a new highway angel up here. Terry Wald, who's, this is kind of ironic. He's from Miami, but Miami, Manitoba, out on the West Coast. Not on the coast, but out west. He's a driver for Cersei Trucking. They're a Winnipeg company. Terry's a 42-year veteran in the industry, by the way. So, there's much more that makes him a highway angel than just this event. But anyway, this incident happened in May out in Saskatchewan, and he noticed some debris on the highway when he was driving, and then he saw a bicycle in the grass on the side of the road, and there was a person lying beside it. So, of course, he stopped to help, and he could tell that another tractor-trailer had hit the cyclist, and he could see where it had gone up onto the grass, the truck driven right over the cyclist and then back onto the road. So he stopped, and then, of course, along came another driver who called 911 while Terry attended to the injured guy, and the cyclist was making a cross-Canada journey, by the way, and he sustained, obviously, serious injuries, multiple broken bones, that sort of thing. But even after the emergency responders got there, Terry stayed and directed traffic for several hours. And here's the neat thing. His company was able to provide dash cam footage to support the investigation, and the RCMP confirmed that the driver responsible for the accident had been apprehended and was charged shortly afterwards. So a huge high five to Terry and a big thumbs down to the driver who fled the scene. But thank goodness for those highway angels.
Well, and the other really cool
Terry's
thing,
our newest one.
and congratulations to Terry over in Miami, Manitoba, which I understand used to be called Thompsonville before it was given the much more spectacular name of Miami. People are like, what? Wait, what's going on there? I will tell you this, too. It's like you kind of laid this out beautifully in the sense that being a highway angel isn't just about stopping and taking a look or maybe offering a bit of assistance. Pillar to post. He was there when it happened. He stayed around to make sure that the people who actually showed up to actually help him got a chance to do their job by keeping traffic away from them. And then he used the technology and working with his own company to make sure the guy that was responsible for this was actually brought to justice. That really is a highway angel. Every part of the supply chain of goodness, right?
Yeah, and what I really like when I hear a story like that is that the company is so supportive. They're not going to give Terry a hard time because he didn't show up on time to deliver his load or pick up or whatever. He had to stay and do what he had to do, and his company had his back. And I think that's, like you said, it's the whole supply chain, and those are the kinds of things that are really important.
By the way, usually shout-outs only come from you, Joanne. Usually when we're celebrating people, we celebrate them with you, and then Jim shows up and goes, oh, yeah, I got a crime wave for you. Or sometimes Jim says, I got a great piece of technology. I'm going to be fair about that. Jim's got a shout-out from Mississauga. Right, Jim? Something good, right?
Yeah, I think this is pretty cool, actually. We all moan and groan about how difficult it is to recruit drivers, and nobody wants to become truck drivers anymore. This is a fleet that's actually doing something about that. It's called Musket Transport. They're a container hauler based out of Mississauga. They're diversified more than containers, but that's their principal business. They also have their own in-house driving school. They call it Commercial Heavy Equipment Training, or CHET. That's been going on for several years, and in fact, the company draws almost exclusively all its new hires come through that school. So it's really tightly integrated into the program and how to onboard drivers by bringing them through school, et cetera, et cetera. So recently, they've held a couple of I guess what you call open houses. Where they've opened up the school and the doors on the trucks and basically the company, and they're inviting young people in school, people, high school kids, anybody who's interested to visit on certain days, and basically they get the cook's tour of the company, the school, the offices, the equipment. They sit in on training sessions so they can get an idea of what's going on. And this is all in aid of trying to encourage the next generation, younger people now who can't work as truck drivers because they're too young, to get a taste of the industry, maybe try some other part of the company that they might want to work for part-time, or just see what trucking's all about. And throw open the doors and say, well, this is what we do. Here's the truck, here's the warehouse, here's all this equipment that we use and the stuff that we do, and just opening their eyes to it. So, I mean, that costs them money. They take people off, regular sort of duties to do this. But I think it shows an interest, or a different kind of way of trying to expand people's horizons to include trucking in their career choices. So I think they need to be given a little shout out for that.
Jim, and the thing is, too, I'm always a big fan, and by the way, I don't look at things cynically, but there's a great term from New Orleans in the 70s where somebody actually said, man, this is going to benefit you as well, to a mayor who did something really, really good. He said, well, what is wrong with a little enlightened self-interest? Which I kind of think is kind of amazing, a moment of understanding. Yeah. But that really is at play here. I mean, like I said, Joanne, and by the way, Joanne, we know for a fact that the company that Terry Wald worked for had his back. They really did. But it benefits them to a large degree. They look better in the process, which is terrific PR. And this is the same thing here, Jim, in the sense that it's great PR. But number two, there's something else that we don't talk about, is the fact that when you take somebody off of their duties to kind of show a kid around the plant, to show a kid around the hub, show a kid around the loading dock, you're also rehearsing. You're always rehearsing what it is your company does. And sometimes the process of teaching somebody something kind of codifies and gives you insight into your job when you're not doing that. And I can't tell you the number of times I have actually talked to one of the folks that works with me, or talk with somebody who's interested in getting into this business, where I suddenly say something and realize, I should be doing more of that myself, if that makes any sense. So there is a kind of not only a positive PR thing about this, but anybody taking these people around these plants, around these factories, around the showroom, around the floors, any of that kind of action is going to kind of remind them what it is they do for a living. Do you dig where I'm coming from here?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I can tell you that from my own experience. If I ever get into a situation where I get to teach somebody or tell somebody about what I do or how to do it, I come away with a better understanding of what I do, because I have to think about it. I have to concentrate a little bit and then think of a way to tell somebody else. And in doing so, it kind of reinforces it in my own mind. So I learn from the teaching that I'm doing.
Yeah, and I had something interesting happen this weekend where somebody was making suggestions to me about moving forward, and I think they realized in making those suggestions, they got halfway through it and went, oh, wait, I think you're setting this up, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, thanks for catching on. You know what I'm saying? That moment where you're saying, like, where you actually begin to make suggestions for what should happen next, and then you realize that you only saw what should happen next because the person who was building the thing actually was leaving the gaps there to put that stuff in next. It's really important because often when you articulate where you are, you're then able to see where you want to go to after that. Okay, that's enough of our philosophizing and existential ideas about the positivity of a supply chain. All right, Joanne, let's talk about the good news for anybody traveling over in Atlantic Canada, shall we?
Yeah, and I happen to be in Atlantic Canada right now. I'm talking to you from beautiful downtown Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Nice.
So hey, I'm in a whole different vibe here. But if you need to get on or off either of our island provinces, that's Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland and Labrador, it just got a whole lot cheaper. So as of August 1st, Ottawa slashed the Confederation Bridge tolls, as well as fares on ferries in Atlantic Canada. So this is all part of the push, we've been talking about it, to boost interprovincial mobility and reduce internal trade barriers. And these structures that I'm talking about are within the jurisdiction of the federal government. That's why the feds Ottawa can come forward and move on these items. So the Confederation Bridge, if you don't know, it's a beautiful, lovely curved 13-kilometer structure that links PEI, our island province, to Canada's mainland, and it carries 95% of all passenger and commercial traffic to and from the province. So tolls dropped pretty sharply last Friday. So the average passenger vehicle toll dropped from $50.25 to get off the island to $20 to cross the bridge. So that's more than 50%. And the same thing for commercial vehicles. So they went by axles, and they said the first 2 axles is $20. Just that, and for each additional axle, 0. So that means trucks get the same as cars in this case. So it's a one-way toll. You just pay when you get off the island. So for a truck, that's there's just one less thing that they have to worry about toll-wise. So beautiful trip across there, and the government's also cutting fare in half for passengers and vehicles and commercial vehicles on the federally supported Eastern Canadian ferries, and there's 2 or 3 small ones. These are interprovincial routes between Woods Island, PEI, and Caribou, Nova Scotia. We talked about small ferry, but we talked about that when they were having troubles with that ferry, how important that is for potato farmers and the agricultural industry and that sort of thing. And then St. John, New Brunswick to Digby, Nova Scotia, a lovely ferry ride, and as well as Les Îles de la Madeleine, Quebec, and Surrey, PEI. So those are, as I said, they're federally supported ferries. And those routes would be familiar to anybody that travels in this part of the country. And then Marine Atlantic, our favorite ferry operator that connects the island of Newfoundland to mainland Nova Scotia, they're reducing fares by 50% for travelers, and they're freezing commercial freights as well. So probably 70% of goods that move to and from Newfoundland are transported by Marine Atlantic, and including, like, I'd say 90% or more of all perishables, fresh produce, medical supplies, that sort of thing. And Marine Atlantic, they operate 2 routes. The most popular one, I think, the year-round route, is from North Sydney, Nova Scotia to Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. That's on the west side of the island. And Newfoundlanders, when they talk about you're from the west, they don't mean Western Canada, they mean Western Newfoundland. Anyway, then there's a seasonal route that operates from North Sydney all the way to Argentia, and that's on the eastern side of the island, closer to the province's capital. So those are very important routes for truck drivers, and they're considered the bridge, Confederation Bridge, and Marine Atlantic. They're actually considered part of the Trans-Canada Highway. So it's just one less thing in the whole process of in improving, reducing internal trade barriers and improving the whole national infrastructure system. So that was pretty good news.
I'm actually, and to be honest with you too, I'm glad you actually went through all of it because I wanted people to get a sense of it isn't just one thing in one place. This really opens up a lot of possibilities for people, and it does open up a larger conversation as well in regards. I see it, and I'm wondering if you see it. It's why I think you're going in this direction. It also kind of opens up possibilities for what happens across borders, does it not?
Yeah, and as I said, this is the federal government stepping up because this is what they have, they have jurisdiction. But as we know, each of the provinces and territories have, especially in the transportation sector, they have a lot of jurisdiction over what happens there, rules and regulations. So they're as well, working on. We haven't heard the announcements, but they're working on their own processes, and this comes, by the way, we talked. It was last month that we talked about the meeting that we took part in, what they called the trucking hackathon, and that was like the provincial deputy ministers of transportation, fairly senior. They're still civil servants; they're not the politicians, but that was those folks. And after we left that meeting, the meeting it had a lot to do with, we called them removing interprovincial trade barriers, and they were looking at very specific and practical ways to reduce those barriers by aligning regulations in the trucking sector. That's under their purview. And Park talked about a lot of those at the time. They had mostly to do with weights and dimensions and vehicle markings and mutual recognition of credentials, that kind of thing. But after we left the meeting, those senior officials continued to meet for another day and a half, and they were tasked by the federal government to do some serious work in the next few weeks on what they've been calling a pilot project in the trucking sector. And they have to present their recommendations to the ministers of transportation, that's the politicians, and have an agreement in place by the fall of 2025. So that's next month, so we should be hearing more information on other processes that are hopefully going to be streamlined in the next few weeks. And by the way, I got to get my little 2 cents in right here.
Hey, why not make it a full 5 cents? Get the whole thing out there.
Okay, listen to this. I want to call you on something. Well, not really, but we were talking a lot about removing the East-West trade barriers.
Right.
So, but we're not talking. I just want to make this clear. We're not talking about centralizing all that sort of stuff. We're talking about unity and unifying. So, the federal government and the provinces all have a part to play in this. And you mentioned, this is what I'm calling you on, you mentioned that a lot of this stuff looked like it was moving us into, that we were going to become a modern economy. I just want to make it clear that, that's not what we're talking about, really. We're talking about a shift in economic policies and a shift in trade dynamics, because lots of other stuff that's going on. But we Canada, we've got free trade agreements with 51 countries around the world, like right now. So in addition to encouraging that more fluid domestic trade, we're looking to those international markets as well. Obviously, there's a period of adjustment while we, line up the new customers and that sort of thing. But it's not that we're going to, because trade may diminish in some sectors with the U.S., that it's all going to be East-West in Canada. We're not going to become that an insulated little country and just trade with ourselves. So just wanted to make that clear.
Oh, no. And let me actually defend you and defend Canada while clarifying myself. What I was kind of meaning is the fact that you guys had for a long time and continue to have, by the way, because there's certain things, by the way, and we can dig into this. This is something really interesting. I don't think people realize that how much of Canadian and Mexican tariffs are not going to have the impact. So much of that is tied up in courts of law by force of treaty, all kinds of interesting conversations around that. What I was referring to is the fact that Canada has a wonderful economy that often involves a great deal of supply of natural goods and national goods into the United States of America. By going east-west, what you're opening up is the idea of um, opening up for more trading partners around the world. I actually think that if you guys do what you're talking about doing, it actually puts pressure on the United States to back off of its tariffs without putting pressure on the United States to back off of its tariffs. Because if people realize they can get, I think part of the reason the administration went after you guys so much is that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And by opening yourself up even more to the rest of the world, it means that a lot of the goods and services that Americans got very used to having cheap are going to be right above them all of a sudden. And if you guys have a good trade deal with us, it becomes, yeah, I mean, I think it's a smart play. I'm actually really thrilled about it.
We've been, I shouldn't say lazy or lax, because we had good, with the Americans, most of your goods, most of that trucking traffic back and forth across the border was Canadian trucks taking stuff down there, bringing stuff back. So all that means, I love to talk about potash. Canada's the world's largest supplier of potash, and you guys buy like 85% of your potash from Canada, or 80%, something like that, and that goes to your, potash it underpins the food stability across the world, not just in the U.S. So, what happens if tariffs go too high on potash and your farmers can't afford it anymore? All that means is that frees up, like a huge portion, bunch of potash that we can sell somewhere else. Because everybody needs this, and it's not something that's produced in every country. It's not something you can make. It's there because of millions of years of geology, that sort of thing. So it's going to take time. And we have some industries that are really going to hurt and are hurting now. The steel and aluminum, the automotive industry, other industries. But as you said, we've got probably 95% of the stuff that we just send back and forth every day there in trucks. That's tariff-free, actually. That wasn't affected by the tariff. So that's still, right now it's not anyway, because those are still things that comply with the current Canada, U.S., Mexico free trade agreement until it doesn't exist anymore. So anyway, obviously we want to keep doing business with you, and we are, and those are, not to make light of it, but there are some industries that are hurting, and they need help up here right now. But we have other industries that will flourish. They just need time to get those new customers lined up. So
yeah, that's the
big
thing.
But we're still going to love you.
Yeah, but by the way, we love you guys too, and you talk to most Americans, and like I said, I always tell people if you ever out there in the United States ever have a problem with Canada as a neighbor, may I suggest living next to Russia is what I will tell people on a regular basis.
That's the next largest producer of potash, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. Ask the people of Poland how they feel about their neighbor. About their neighbor to the east, if you ever get a chance, by the way. Jim Park and Joanne Ritchie join us this morning. Jim, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you if you wanted to put your 5 cents in on the topic that Joanne just addressed, or we can move on to other things real quick. What you want to do?
Well, I would reiterate what she said, I suppose. We're in the thick of it now. A whole new round of tariffs just kicked in, so we're all pretty sensitive about how we're going to maintain business as usual for some companies. It's interesting that something like 90% of the goods that move back and forth across the border aren't affected by tariffs because of the current free trade agreement that's in place protects those items from tariffs. But still, the big ticket stuff, we talked about potash, steel, aluminum, softwood lumber, et cetera, that's not part of the deal. So yeah, they're getting hammered and they're getting a lot of press, but we really do have to continue to open up those borders interprovincially across the country and have a new way of have a new look at how we do business in Canada. So I'm encouraged by all the activity that's going on now within our industry, the trucking industry, trying to reduce trade barriers and make it easier for carriers to do business across provincial borders. And I hope after all this dust settles, that we wind up with a better agreement, a better arrangement for everybody who's trying to do business in this country, because these barriers go up artificially, usually to protect someone's interest in some province, and then before you know it, there's more barriers going up. That doesn't always serve everybody to their best advantage. So I would again, thank Donald Trump for focusing, our own problems here at home more vividly, so that we can start to address this stuff here, and then move on to global stuff at some later date. But it's, despite all the doom and gloom, I'm encouraged that we're going to come out of this the better for it.
Yeah, and like I said, and the comment I made, Joanne, about modernizing the economy is a simple thing. I'll be really blunt about it, is the fact that, look, people get used to things, and sometimes they get used to things that really, really work, and suddenly they're taken away from you because somebody doesn't want that.
Well, yeah.
And then you suddenly
We
say,
didn't have
okay, we're going to
We
look
didn't
east.
have to worry about it. That we had good trade agreements, we had long-term customers and partners. That's all changed. So we're just looking, we're looking at our other markets. We have, as I said, we do have firm trade agreements with 51 other countries. It's hard, I know, for sometimes for some of our listeners to understand our political system as well, with the provinces and the federal government and how they all interplay. It's hard for our own listeners, our own Canadians sometimes don't really get it. But they're all the best thing that's come out of this, all these meetings and all these different levels, everybody is saying no more studies. No more studies.
Oh my God! I got to tell you, you just basically summed up everything about the discussion of parking in the United States. By the way, can we not have a committee to form a committee? Can we just actually take some action? We got to take action now. I got to cut you both loose. I can't tell you how much. And by the way, thank you both. By the way, Jim and Joanne and I have talked a couple of times. And like I said, we are more than happy to take your phone calls during this, guys. We encourage you to do that. But actually having time to breathe and talk about things in more length has been really terrific. Thank you both, by the way. I think a lot of our friends know more about the Canadian form of government than many of them have ever known before. Thank you both so much.
Okay. Catch you later.